online. Go to the AA.ie.
Wet and windy for now, but turning dry for most of the evening with a hard frost in some parts. Outbreaks of rain will return later in the west and southwest with some sleet and snow. Overnight lows of 3 degrees to 1 below. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
And you're welcome to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 o'clock, speaking about the beautiful game of football in the company of the former Republic of Ireland defender Gary Breen, the football correspondent of the Irish Independent Dan McDonnell, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Remember, our football coverage brought to you thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. You can text us 53106. Tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming as well as listening on News Talk. You can watch us on the social channels for Off the Ball. For Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app for iOS and Android. Search OTB Sports in your app store now to download it if you have not already. Join the conversation, folks, in our text number now, 53106. Man United fans, what happened against Sheffield United? Chelsea supporters, did your club make the right decision to sack Frank Lampard? Are you excited about Thomas Tuchel arriving at Stamford Bridge? Liverpool, are you back in the title race with confidence after that win over hapless Spurs? And Arsenal supporters, how has Mikel Arteta turned a dreadful run of form around to guide his team to 5 wins in 6 league matches ahead of the Manchester United game, which kicks off at 5:30? Get involved, send your opinions and your questions to 53106. Everton 0, Newcastle 2 in the early game. Let's hear now from the Ireland captain Seamus Coleman speaking to BT Sport.
It's a massive disappointment for us, but I think we know in this league that I think first and foremost you've got to outfight and outbattle the opposition, and I think today, you know, Newcastle wanted it more, which for us isn't good, but I think that's what happened today.
Kind of a different approach from them as well. They seemed a little bit more aggressive. Normally they play deep and counter, but they deliberately didn't do that today. Did that catch Everton out a little bit?
No, I don't think so. Listen, at this level it all brings its own difficulties, but I just thought that, you know, first and foremost as a team, as individuals today, we weren't up for the fight as much as Newcastle were, and I think them words say enough. Listen, I've got to answer these questions. Words are easy to come out, but it's just all about actions, you know.
And what's Carlo Ancelotti's reaction in the dressing room there?
Listen, as you can imagine, he's not happy, but what happens in there will stay between us. But I think we didn't need anyone to explain that to us. We were nowhere near good enough, and we're very disappointed, but as I said, getting outfought and outbattled lost us the game, and Newcastle fully deserved it.
Thanks,
Cheers, thank you.
Seamus Coleman there speaking to BT Sports. So Everton remains 7th in the table. Newcastle 9 points clear of safety. Callum Wilson with both goals in the match. Gary Breen, good afternoon. Hope you're well.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
10 Premier League goals in 19 games for Callum Wilson is probably the reason why Newcastle are staying up.
It was a brilliant sign. I thought it really was for Steve Bruce. I was surprised that Newcastle were able to get him, but there's no doubt he'll play a major part. I actually looked at that game today, John, and felt that the way Newcastle were trying to play, they obviously want to release his pace down the sides, and there was a couple of big decisions for Ancelotti today, whether or not Pickford started in goal or Olsen, bearing in mind Pickford's mistakes. So Pickford gets the nod. But also the fact that 2 fullbacks. Now, we listened to Seamus Coleman talk brilliantly there. He's so articulate, so honest. He's a great captain. That's one that we're so proud of for Ireland, and Everton should be. But I was surprised that Coleman and Digne played at fullback, because I think Ancelotti stumbled across a back 4, which is essentially 4 centre-halves through injuries early on in the season, and that's his go-to back 4. So if you think about those centre-halves playing in full-back areas, they normally narrow up and are very tight to their centre-halves. There's no space for Wilson to run down the side. So that was a big call. I think Ancelotti's probably gone with Coleman and Digne because of their qualities going forward. But it's actually proved to be a disastrous result, really, for Everton, bearing in mind they were on the cusp of really challenging.
Yeah, Manchester City 1-0 up, by the way, against Sheffield United after, inside 10 minutes. Gabriel Jesus with the goal. City will go 4 points clear at the top over Manchester United if they win. I mean, that's not unexpected, but it could be a long afternoon for the Blades after their win during the week. Yeah, he brought in Doucouré, Sigurdsson and Iwobi today, Gary, Carlo Ancelotti. Must be very frustrating for him. Jeff Hendrick nearly played the full match. He did play the full match for Newcastle. Without a win in 11 before today. Yeah, it's their first win in 12. And good for Jeff Hendrick that he is getting regular game time.
Well, certainly is for him and certainly for us going as we approach in March. And I think it's difficult at times for Jeff in that midfield role alongside Shelvey. I think both of them by their nature, don't really sense danger very quickly in there. So at times they've looked like they've been exposed a little bit. Certainly they were against Leeds in terms of how expansive they were. But in terms of him playing regularly, that's great for us, for Jeff.
Yeah, Jordan Pickford, he hasn't shaken that sense, I think, Gary, that there's always a clangor in him.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, this is frustration. You think about the goal that they did concede in the week, and he doesn't let the ball go out for a corner when it should do comfortably. He makes the save, then he comes flapping for the corner, and then it spills through him, goes through his body against Leicester. So, listen, Ancelotti has backed him. Olsen has got his games, who's a very experienced goalkeeper for Sweden as well in the cup as such. But I just felt, what would be the decision today? Would he maybe take Pickford out of the firing line? He didn't. He went with him again, and it was interesting that even for that mistake in midweek, that Gareth Southgate was there. So I think it's a difficult time. There's no doubt in his ability as a goalkeeper, brilliant shot stopper, but you're quite right that those mistakes seem to be a little bit too much regularity about them now.
Irish Toffees, Irish Magpies, we know you're out there. You can text us on 53106 with your views on what you saw today, Everton and Newcastle, and your hopes for the rest of the season. There was a stage between 1996 and 2004, Gary, that Arsenal and Man United won all of the leagues. They carved it up between them. Fergie versus Wenger, it was box office stuff. Yeah. Keane and Vieira in the tunnel. Solskjaer and Arteta just doesn't have the same ring to it at the moment.
No, it doesn't. Listen, we're talking about heavyweights there. Listen, they're young managers trying to make their way as such. Got massive jobs probably before they should have done, essentially, but that's the way it's going now. I think their association with both clubs is the reason why they got the jobs. But it's a massive game. I'm really looking forward to that. There's some really interesting individual battles that will have a massive bearing on the game. Listen, in terms of Arsenal's performance against Southampton the other night, there was so many good positive attributes to it in terms of the energy that he's got in that team now. Partey coming back, giving that physicality. But Smith Rowe in that 10 position, which will be fascinating now that Odegaard's coming from Real Madrid on loan. How does that affect Smith Rowe in terms of his development? I don't think that a player as young and as experienced as Smith Rowe would have gone from now in terms of breaking into the team for that Chelsea game to the end of the season. So maybe it will be a job share, but I'm really looking forward to that game. I'll be fascinated to see who Solskjaer picks at the top of his attack, whether it's Cavani, whether it's Martial, because certainly Cavani's movement will cause massive problems for whoever Arsenal centre-backs are.
Dan and Johnny, good afternoon. Hope you're both well. United, Arsenal, is it a rivalry anymore? Like, with so many brilliant games between them when the results obviously were at their height for both clubs. We had 99 gigs, you had the Battle of the Buffet, I mean, Van Nistelrooy, that penalty, you had 8-2. You've all these, even back to a brawl in like 1989, 1990. It's been a rivalry that has probably waned.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that rivalry was probably synonymous with personalities probably as well too, John, which obviously would be one of the issues. And we might have spoken about, I think it was actually with David Moyler was on a couple of weeks back, that, there isn't necessarily, there's not too many teams now have these players that like people, to be blunt, that people hate, on the other side, or fans hate, or these like, the Keane Vieira thing. And, Van Nistelrooy had a way of sort of winding people up. He was in the middle, I think, of one of those scraps, wasn't he? And but I mean, listen, you can't speak for how the supporters feel. I would assume that there's still a lingering rivalry there. I think they're two of the more active clubs on like social media and stuff in terms of the personality of their fans and how they have a voice. And I'm sure it wouldn't take much for it to become a rivalry again, but I suppose it comes back to that point of in fact, listen, I can't even speak to that. Maybe it's still a very big rivalry. I mean, I know Gary would obviously see a bit of Arsenal, a lot of Arsenal, and he could probably be more on top of what the mood on the ground it would be in normal times when Manchester United visit. I don't know if has it diminished in recent times since Wenger and Ferguson aren't there. I don't know. And obviously now we're in this sort of weird vacuum where every game is flat in its own way. So you probably don't have those divisive characters maybe to the forefront of either side, but it wouldn't take much. I mean, listen, it's a game of substance because every game at the moment has a certain degree of substance with it because the league itself being as it is, and Arsenal's sort of recuperation since Christmas is a pretty interesting story. But I don't know. I mean that was a great rivalry. Certainly, you have a rivalry where the two teams going for the leagues like really didn't like each other, and that gave it, and the managerial aspect as well. Like it's very hard to manufacture that. Like that very naturally happened over time, and obviously it's harder for the current players to suddenly feel that when they have never been a part of anything like that.
Yeah, there was that goal Henry scored against Man United when he flicked it over his head and then he volleyed it, and it was just absolutely sensational. And as a neutral, you remember these are really big games. Like I remember even where I was when the Giggs thing happened. It was in the Clarendon Bar, which doesn't even exist anymore. Quite near from here, actually. Johnny, did you take an interest in Arsenal Man U at the time or now recently?
Yeah, like those two memories, the Keane Vieira thing you're talking about. I still kind of look at Arsenal post Highbury, and I suppose the time when they were at Highbury. I think Arsene Wenger spoke about this, that they struggled for their soul kind of when they went to the new ground, and it just wasn't quite the same. Highbury was obviously a very unique place, and I suppose it was a glorious end to its history in that Wenger team came along. And those games against Manchester United at that time, a Manchester United team effectively led by two incredibly driven people in Ferguson and Keane. And when you match them up then against the likes of Vieira and Petit, Tony Adams, and obviously Arsene Wenger, they were great times. Maybe I'm just getting older and that you kind of defer to nostalgia, but it just seemed a slightly different game then. There was an awful lot of bite to it. There was proper kind of hatred to some extent between the two, especially between Vieira and Keane and between those two teams. And it was a hatred driven by the fact that they didn't like being inferior to the other, I think. It's a different scenario now, JD. I know Arsenal have made a very good rally, and Manchester United, all in all, are having a good season. I know we'll probably talk about it today. I was kind of coming on the show today, and it's like, I really don't want to be talking about, is the Sheffield United game a sign that Man United aren't that great? They've had an unbelievable run of games. I think I was just looking at it there. I think their last 10 games, only one of them was decided by more than a goal. So it's been a series of close games. I think the fixture list they've had in January, if you look at they played Sheffield United, Liverpool, Fulham, Liverpool, Burnley, Watford, Man City, Aston Villa. That's just in January alone. And just before Christmas, they played Leicester and Wolves. So many games that it kind of does. Like, there's an awful lot of football now. It's very hard on the players to keep performing. I think you can forgive them like performances like the one against Sheffield United because they've been on a good run. But Arsenal will come in a pretty good way, I think. And it's going to be an interesting game. Myself and Dan were having a little bit of reminiscing earlier. We were saying it'd be a lovely one just in the old days. We'd leave the studio and we'd probably find a bar in Dublin that was showing the game, and there'd be a good buzz around.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it's just like the Clarendon. It's just not there anymore, JD.
Yeah, very good.
But I think, lads, the one thing is, I suppose, I don't know, like Liverpool and Manchester City has obviously they've been the two best teams in the last couple of years. And I know it's a bit more open this year, and like there's been very good games between them, but it's different, isn't it? Like it's not it doesn't have the feeling that those like even the Arsenal Man United game, the famous one that's quoted that they're in the tunnel too. I think Chelsea won the league that season. Actually, I think that was the season. It was more an end of game. It was an end of games. Like it was almost a dead rubber that game. Really, it didn't necessarily have big impact, but like the legacy was there. Whereas like Liverpool City games now are great games to look forward to. I mean, it's coming up now, like isn't it next weekend? Is it? It's upon us, but like it's just not the same sort of spite, But I don't want to sound like one of these people in the studio, like Roy Keane in the studio talking about people are shaking hands and this is a disgrace. But I suppose there is. I don't know. Is there just a modern aspect to it, or was it just that the Arsenal Manchester United thing lasted for so long? As well.
The only thing, Dan, the only intensity I think we've seen, you're right about City, Liverpool in terms of the quality of football, but the only intensity we've seen that's got anywhere near that was Chelsea, Liverpool, those European Champions League battles, wasn't it? Where it was Rafa against Jose, North, East, South, the old money, the new money, and they hated each other. That's the only time we've ever kind of got near that type of intensity.
And as
I can't think of an example. That's what, like maybe people out there are going to, come in with them, but I don't think there's anything at that level, that we can think of in recent times. Even the Man City years, like Man City, obviously had their derby games and a few sort of spiky games with Chelsea and so on, but they haven't necessarily, like as a group of players, they haven't necessarily been in some war with another group of players as such. It's been a slightly different dynamic with their. I mean, they have been the story of the last decade to some degree, and that they have never been that far away. but they haven't had that one distinct rival that they really have this edge with.
And they lead Sheffield United by a goal to nil. Gabriel Jesus with the goal inside the first 10 minutes. Dan asked you there, Gary, like from the feeling on the ground, has that rivalry waned? Is it more about Spurs now with Arsenal? Or it's probably more about Arsenal's internal issues than Man United or any other club?
Yeah, it has. It doesn't, because ultimately that game against Manchester United in that period was, if you lost, you could eventually lose the league as such. I know Dan highlighted that famous tunnel one wasn't essentially for the league, but even that Giggs goal where that loose Vieira pass, that's the FA Cup, and you're thinking that, you know, Arsenal going to win that game. Obviously, Bergkamp's penalty saved, and everything just added to the mix. But at the centre, at the real core of it was Keane, Vieira. And I even remember as a player going into changing rooms and the arguments between us in terms of who was better, Keane, Vieira. I was travelling with Jay Bothroyd. You might remember him, centre forward, who played the game for England, grew up at Arsenal, came through the ranks there, so would have played with Vieira. And obviously, I'm playing with Roy for Ireland, and everyone had an opinion on who was the better centre midfielder. It was a great debate, and I think it's one that still rages now.
Yeah, was it like Brian Clough where you talked about it for 20 minutes and agreed that you were right?
No, because I would be fighting my corner, but he wouldn't shut up, Jay Bothroyd. We'd even be training, he'd be still saying about it. But listen, they were like, incredible midfielders. If they were around now, I cried. I don't even know what they'd be worth.
Does one defeat make a bad team? Is Johnny absolutely right that people are too invested in this 24/7 news cycle about things being disastrous or great, and they forgot what's happened the previous week? Gary, what did you make of what happened against Sheffield United from Man United perspective?
Well, listen, it was a frustrating result. Of course it was, in terms of all the momentum they had going into the game. But no, that doesn't make them a bad team. And especially in the season where we've had 9 different teams at the top of the Premier League, I think it's the most we've ever had. So there's an opportunity now. Even the points tally now is so congested from the top down to about 6th or 7th, isn't it? There's a real opportunity for everyone. So that's why the frustration will be for Manchester United fans, is that there's an opportunity to keep that momentum going. A massive game again against Arsenal, a real challenge, and they've got a couple of tough ones coming up with Southampton, then Everton. So to drop 3 points against Sheffield United, who have had their struggles, but obviously have got a bit more confidence. They said the fact that they won them cup games gave them that, and then obviously they beat Newcastle, but you still don't expect them to go and beat Manchester United. So I don't think suddenly they're a bad team, but I certainly didn't think they're as good a team as everyone was saying to begin with. Well, certainly not as consistent as you need to be to win the league.
I've got 53106 for some text messages. One of the Red Top's headings for that Man U Arsenal match was war and pizza. And you had Wenger and Ferguson and Vieira and Keane. Can't think of a similar matchup. Proper hatred. That is from Brian in Dublin. Just on the Man United situation there, Gary. Anthony Martial, 5 goals in all competitions this season. Is that a disappointing return for him?
It is for anyone who's centre forward for Manchester United. I think you're judged by the highest standards, even though it's a reduced status for Manchester United in recent seasons. That's why I'll be fascinated, John, to see who gets the nod today, because in terms of how Manchester United will play, and certainly how Arsenal have been playing, the press has been very good for Arsenal. Certainly was against Southampton, but it was caught out by a relatively simple ball from a centre-half. You just clip it over that Arsenal press, and then suddenly you're at that vulnerable Arsenal back four. Now, if you think about centre-halves who are able to do that, Harry Maguire is just your man. A brilliant pass for the ball from that defensive position. So I think Arsenal need to make sure he's marked and they stop that. The very fact that Martial is probably a different type of centre-forward to Cavani in terms of he can stretch the game with his pace. But if you look at the stats, Cavani's done far more sprints at a higher intensity than Martial. So I'm looking at that scenario today and I'm thinking, if I was to pick a centre-forward to exploit Arsenal centre-halves, and if you look at the performance midweek against Southampton, Danny Ings had a great chance. And the other centre-forward, I can't remember his name, had a great chance in terms of crosses, a little bit of movement across the centre-half. Because if David Luiz, for all his skill set, for the fact he's a wonderful footballer, great physicality, just doesn't see that movement quick enough. And Cavani is an absolute master of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does get the nod at centre-forward ahead of Martial.
Defensively, Gary, Harry Maguire going to start for United. You have to think for the rest of the season. Should he have Bailly or Lindelof beside him, Victor Lindelof?
Well, in terms of when they initially done that and made the decision to put Bailly in and against Leicester, you're thinking, yeah, against Vardy's pace and stuff. But obviously Bailly had the injury. Lindelof was sub in the week. I'm not sure who's fit enough to play now. Tuanzebe, I thought was culpable for that winning goal for Sheffield United. Just walking in the penalty box. It was so strange. He wasn't the only one guilty of it for that goal that they conceded Manchester United. But I think if I was picking anyone to maybe play against Arsenal today, I think I'd probably go with Lindelof.
Lads, there was a great article by Jonathan Liu in The Guardian today about Paul Pogba. I'll just give some quotes from it. The battery of television pundits warning that unless he books his ideas up, the 27-year-old World Cup winner and 4-time Serie A champion may never fulfil his potential. And yet for all of this, over recent weeks, there have been moments when it feels like we might just be getting somewhere. Pogba was 23 when he returned to Old Trafford in a way, had spent his whole career learning from Paul Scholes in his first United stint, from Arturo Vidal and Andrea Pirlo in Juventus. Now the learning would stop. His job would be to turn around its dysfunctional super club at the age of 23. And not with goals or saves, but from central midfield to the likes of Ander Herrera, Marouane Fellaini, Scott McTominay and Jesse Lingard for company. When it didn't work, we shouted at him to try harder, as if he was a racehorse or a recalcitrant piece of computer hardware rather than a human being playing a team sport. Perhaps this is why Pogba has so often been the focal point of United fans' criticism, a media obsession, a surrogate for the decrepitude of the wider organisation, and perhaps it's only now, with United second in the league, that we just see how reliant Pogba's game is on a functioning collective around him. The 25-yard screamers are really just ornamentation at heart. Pogba, a combination player, only touches and dainty triangles and sweeping diagonal passes for quick, ruthless forwards to finish.
That is interesting stuff, because the game against Liverpool, and Solskjaer made a big point of this afterwards. It was all about, we sort of played Liverpool at our kind of tempo and we dictated the way that the game would go. And he was on about sort of the position that Pogba was in. But with Pogba in the central position, I'd be interested to know what Gary thinks of this. They still look like a team that you're going to basically exploit. And you could see in some games, in some big games, he'll put Pogba maybe out a bit more wide. Notably the league game against Liverpool, went for it a bit more in the cup. But you can get moments from Pogba where he is that world-class player, but I don't think I trust him in the central midfield position in terms of like 90 minutes in the engine room without two extremely good players around him. And Manchester United with Fred and McTominay, to a lesser extent, obviously Matic, they've actually been pretty good in midfield this season. But Pogba's still a bit of an issue. I think if they play Man City, where do you play him? Because he's still too peripheral at times. He has all the tools, but he doesn't. I don't know if it's a mental thing with him or what is it, but he just doesn't influence the game as much as he could or should consistently over 90 minutes. And I wonder, will Solskjaer kind of play him centrally going forward in all big games? Because I'm still not sure he fully trusts him.
53106. Dan, you want to come in on that?
Oh no, the piece that the quote generally is like, it's certainly interesting that like Pogba so often he is like the lightning rod for criticism and like you like. Listen, at times it has been justified. Let's be honest. There have been times where like he has sort of exasperated people and maybe some of his off the pitch stuff has annoyed people. But I think at the other times because he's such a big name, like the bigger the name, sometimes the more extreme the reaction can be in terms of anything that they do. And he hasn't been as bad sometimes as has been let on, and he has been more effective at times. And people have realised, and it's a strange one. Like you mentioned earlier about Manchester United losing to Sheffield United, it's actually a really inconsistent season for a lot of teams and a lot of players. And like Pogba's no more different to a lot of players now, really. Like it's sort of he like he says, you really sort of couldn't pinpoint him and say, well, no, he's been a real problem in that regard this year. I mean, a lot of teams are struggling with their consistency, and at times he's been as good as anyone. So like. I think there's a valid point in what's said there. I mean, we always go back to the fact that he has won a World Cup, he has achieved a lot in his career, but obviously, listen, he has also invited some of the criticism at times too. Like you see these 20-minute cameos where he can be absolutely outrageously good, and naturally, because of that, you want more of that all of the time.
53106. Hi lads, the United fan, I was dejected after Wednesday night's performance, but I've really enjoyed the season so far, and a win at Arsenal today will have me believing we might be able to put up some sort of challenge this year. And another texter, there aren't really any dominant centre mids like them. Keane Vieira now, sadly. That is from Brian. It is 1-0 to Manchester City against Sheffield United in the Premier League. Earlier on, Everton losing 2-0 at home to Newcastle. Callum Wilson scoring both goals. Crystal Palace 0, Wolves 0 at the moment. Fulham are 1-0 up away to West Brom. A good score for Fulham so far. The Championship leaders Norwich drew 0-0 with Middlesbrough earlier. Obviously, Irish interest in the Championship. We'll get to that a bit later on. Speak about the likes of Conor Hourihane. Birmingham City 1, Coventry City 1. It's Blackburn 0, Luton 0. Brentford 1, Wycombe 1. Cardiff 0, Millwall 1. Derby 1, Bristol City 0. It's Huddersfield Town 1, Stoke City 1, Nottingham Forest 0, Barnsley 0, Rotherham United 0, Swansea City 1, and Sheffield Wednesday 0, Preston 0. Arsenal have signed that new player, Martin Odegaard, on loan from Real Madrid. Gary, you are the OTB Saturday Dutch football expert. You must
not so much now.
Okay.
Maybe a year ago, but not so much. But I have seen a lot of him, you're right. And he initially goes over to Eredivisie and he performed very well. And I think Real Madrid are looking at him thinking, OK, we buy him as a young star, not quite ready, and they're delighted with what he's done there. But what really grabbed Real Madrid's attention was when he went on loan to Sociedad. That was the difference, where he was producing goals, stats, to the level that they then brought him back into the fold this season and were expected to reintroduce him as this transition period from Real Madrid, get his opportunity. But there's a little bit of a fallout with Zidane. I think Odegaard's probably thought to himself, listen, I want to be playing football. He probably thinks he can see out Zidane that he won't last, that he can come to Arsenal. But there's no doubt in his talent. He is a very talented player. The big question again is that Smith Rowe has just performed so well. But as I said earlier, it's a big ask for him to carry the team in a way that he actually has done. Since he come into that team and that win against Chelsea, he's been unbelievably good. But I think Odegaard comes in and just gives them more options. He's going to be a very good signing for Arsenal.
Will he play in that role, Smith Rowe's role, in the 4-2-3-1?
He plays in the 10. He can play in those wide areas as such. And I think there's going to be a fluidity about Arsenal's attack. But the big difference about what Smith Rowe gives you, John, in the number 10 role is energy and that running ability to take that ball deep and get Arsenal up the pitch. Odegaard's not that type. He's more of a technical player, in keeping with, kind of the stereotype of a number 10. But the modern day number 10 is not about that now. It's what you do out of possession just as much as what you do. And Smith Rowe is the focal point of that press. He goes and supports the centre forward, be it Lacazette, Aubameyang. Odegaard doesn't have that in his game yet, but will have to do that if he wants to play in this Arsenal team.
Speaking about Smith Rowe there, another academy graduate is Saka. Yeah. He is, I love that guy.
He's fantastic. He really is. And there was a period last year, John, where they hadn't secured his contract. It really was let run down. And this is a guy who then comes in. He looks effortless, whatever position he plays. He's such a talented footballer. He really is. And him, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, who's unfortunately got a bad injury again, just reinvigorated that Arsenal team. They were struggling, weren't they? But since that Christmas period, they've taken 16 points from 18, going to this game now against Manchester United full of confidence. So massive turnaround on the back of those young players showing what it means to play for Arsenal.
But you're still not convinced defensively, Gary,
No, because listen, you've seen just in that instance, the crosses coming into the box. David Luiz, I think, is a fantastic footballer. I've said it so many times, but he doesn't think like a centre-half. Goes past that near post too often, and then that just puts massive pressure then on the other centre-half holding to come over and cover the space. Danny Ings gets a header in midweek, which he should score. Adams with the other centre-forward, I couldn't think of earlier. He should have scored as well. So this is the problem. And if I just think about the movement of Cavani, who the likes of Greenwood, Martial have been talking glowingly about him since he came into Manchester United, that it's just that continuous effort to get across that centre-half. If he does that against Arsenal centre-halves, I think Arsenal could be in trouble.
It's funny, we haven't even spoken about Bruno Fernandes yet.
Well, listen, you talk about him. We're talking about Paul Pogba in terms of the high standards he's judged by. The reason why he has not got the plaudits or achieved what he wants is because at Manchester United, you have to be the best of the best. Look what Bruno has done. In 1 year at that club, that is incredible. And John was so right in what he says about it's how you influence games. And I think when you think about Manchester United, certainly those great Manchester United teams of the past, it's their consistency levels, that they can do it week in, week out. And that's something you can accuse Pogba that he can't, but Bruno certainly can.
53106 for your text messages. Pogba is like Gerrard without the volume of goals. He cannot play centre midfield. Indeed, United's problem is that they cannot control a game. They play in bursts, but they've got a leaky defence, and that can't have a good outcome. That is from Aaron, who says that United have no hope. And guys, if people have forgotten, Man United were knocked out of the Champions League in the group stage. This United team are not as good as some people think. United beat an injury-hit Liverpool last week in the FA Cup. A fully fit Liverpool, I think, will be looking at Liverpool in the next round of the Cup, not United. Dan and Johnny... Go on, Johnny.
Definitely a very interesting kind of few days there, JD, with that, like that the Liverpool performance against Spurs and the way it worked out. I think Manchester United have had probably a bad week, really, in terms of their own title ambitions. And I kind of agree when you watch them against Man City in the League Cup and against Liverpool. At times anyway, they're definitely not as good as them. Liverpool have better players, but it's just, in fairness, Gary, they've found ways of winning games, and they've got a lot of late goals. They've players to bring off the bench, and an interesting one as well today. JD, Jack Byrne is starting in for his new club against Apollon, who he would have played for.
Do you have the stream, Johnny, in the room?
I'm obviously fully against illegal streams, but I wouldn't mind seeing that game. If you could pay €5, I'd like to see how he gets on today, because I don't know, midfield is such a mad area for Ireland at the moment. This is a big day for Jack Byrne, and you know, the Cypriot experiment, or whatever you want to call it, the fact that Mick isn't there anymore and he's gone on the record as saying that he's happy enough with his progress, he's getting fit, but starting in what is a big game today for them is going to be interesting. Half 4, I think.
Okay, got to take a break, folks. So much to talk about Jack Byrne, Conor Hourihane, the young Irish prospects, Dean Kiely moving into that goalkeeping role with the Republic of Ireland. Thomas Tuchel, we're going to hear from him after the break.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Alive and Kicking with Claire McKenna.
This Sunday morning on Alive and Kicking, I talk pandemic-induced insomnia with Brí Ledy of the Insomnia Clinic. I'll also be joined by best-selling author Sarah Wilson about her fantastic new book, This One Wild and Precious Life, How to Reconnect in a Fractured World. Well needed in these times.
Alive and Kicking with Claire McKenna.
Thanks to Benelin. Always read the label. Ask your pharmacist for advice.
This Sunday morning at 9.
On News Talk.
Try the latest cordless vacuum cleaner technology from Bosch. Our premium model includes a quick charger and 2 exchangeable battery packs to ensure that you can clean on all levels and never run out of power. Now with a full 90-day money-back guarantee. For more information, go online to powercity.ie.
Want to advance your career in facilities management? Then talk to Portobello Institute. Choose an IWFM award or a BSc or MSc degree in facilities management and gain advanced entry to year 2 or 3 with a trade cert or relevant qualifications and experience. Affordable and accessible online study and small group lectures are now enrolling. So talk to an expert about our IWFM degree and master's courses in facilities management at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
Make it a really good afternoon and check out the great car insurance discounts at insuremycars.ie. Ireland's trusted car insurance specialists. For super family savings, check out insuremycars.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremycars.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Grant has been providing reliable, efficient and affordable home heating technology for over 40 years. From the award-winning Grant Vortex condensing oil boiler to the highly efficient Arona heat pump, you can trust Grant to heat your home. Think heating, think Grant. Visit grant.eu.
To keep well over the days and weeks ahead, it's good to make a plan. Consider doing at least one thing that's good for your mind and body each day. Exercise outdoors can improve your mood. Making time for a hobby can help you relax. Keeping in touch with friends or family will help you feel connected. Even simple breathing techniques, like counting to 4 while you breathe in and 6 to breathe out, can help calm a stressed mind. All these simple things can add up to help with your well-being at this time. Brought to you by Healthy Ireland, helping you keep well. Find more ideas on gov.ie/Healthy Ireland, an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
Whether it's your first step on the property ladder or your first place with stairs, from new builds to rebuilds, a new home is one of life's biggest moments, and we all know life doesn't always go to plan. That's why at Bank of Ireland, our personalised mortgages can change if your life changes. When you're ready to make a move, we're ready to make it with you. Bank of Ireland. Begin. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Over 18s only. Mortgage approval subject to assessment of suitability and affordability. Bank of Ireland Mortgage Bank, trading as Bank of Ireland Mortgages, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Dunn family were amazed by the range and quality on offer in Lidl during their big save.
You could just go to the one shop and get absolutely everything you need. Quality and choice.
You've got everything, one-stop shop.
I did want to buy a drill and a couple of other things.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't let him.
Check out Lidl's range and quality for yourself when you start your big save at Lidl.ie. Lidl, more for you.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
I can absolutely assume that it's a big disappointment for the fan base to see that Frank was sacked. I have the biggest respect for him personally and for his legacy. it just got bigger when I received a message today in the morning to wish me all the best.
Yeah, Thomas Tuchel, the new Chelsea manager there. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 o'clock, speaking about football with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. We're joined by Gary Breen, the former Republic of Ireland defender, Dan McDonnell, the Irish independent football correspondent, and Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, as well as listening to us on News Talk. You can watch us on the social channels for Off the Ball, Periscope, on Twitter, @OffTheBall, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. Download that now if you haven't already. 53106 for your text messages. Gary, Thomas Tuchel, central casting. He's hit the ground absolutely like a jumbo jet. It's the statistics coming out, all the the explanations, the beautiful fluid. This guy's like an elite manager, Paris Saint-Germain, Champions League final. Just planted into Chelsea, do the job, win trophies, and then get sacked.
Yeah, listen, he'll know what's ahead of him as such, and I think it's a good appointment. I really do. There's a lot of fallout still in terms of how Frank was treated. That in the one moment he has an indifferent run of form, he's sacked as such, which suggests then that they only ever saw him as a short-term fix, as opposed to this new remit that we were led to believe that Chelsea were going to go down a different road in terms of developing young players, changing the philosophy. And I think, although of course he's an icon at Chelsea, in fact, his first home game was covering it for you guys. I swear, John, it was like a pilgrimage on the way to the game. It was unbelievable, the excitement in terms of Frank being the manager. But I think it didn't look like it was ever going to last, did it? As soon as there was any indifferent results, there was a lot of talk about managers potentially being available. And as soon as Tuchel becomes available, he puts pressure on all of the managers at the big clubs because he's so highly thought of. So it was interesting to see the difference in terms of the possession. He came out with the stats. He was heavy on it, as we heard post-match. 79% possession against Wolves, and he probably thinks that they're dominating, but Wolves do let the opposition have a lot of the ball as such. But 825 passes, successful passes, the highest in the Premier League this season. When you think about how dominant Manchester City are on the ball, to surpass that already suggests it's going to be a lot of build-up. But the most fascinating thing for me was the fact that he played a back five. Changed that. That was the biggest difference in terms of Frank's team, and also the fact that Mason Mount was taken out, a young player who come through the ranks, who was one of the favourites of Frank. Lampard, played so many games under him. So it does look like there's going to be a lot of difference between Frank's Chelsea and Tuchel's Chelsea.
I get the sense you feel sorry for Frank Lampard. Do you think it was the wrong decision?
Well, I don't feel sorry for him, because I think Frank, more than anyone, will know how it works at Chelsea, because he'd have been in those dressing rooms when managers were discarded. You know, you're talking about Ancelotti, just second in the league after winning the double in his first season. He's discarded. So he knows how it works. He would have been part of those players who were very powerful, and he would have known that those players have aligned to whoever makes the decisions, whether it's Abramovich or it's the director of football. But they talk to those players, and those players are very happy to do talking about the manager. Suggestions were that Frank had fallen out with a couple of players, but the biggest stick to beat him with was probably the underperforming Werner and Havertz, that they hadn't excelled, and maybe that was a decision to get the Tuchel in, that he can make them better. But I don't know. I don't think anyone will probably say that they were surprised by the sacking, because it's Chelsea and because of the fact that Frank is so inexperienced at that level.
You'd wonder why they appointed them guys in the first place, really.
Well, like when you mention those players, Gary, is it a thing that an inexperienced coach is vulnerable to, like, experienced players or big name players that you spoke about there, maybe mentally losing faith in him, and kind of, if not like purposely down the tools, but just for whatever reason, they probably have it in their head that they don't really rate the manager? Because Werner's struggles, I couldn't really get my head around where all that went wrong. And did Lampard, it sounded like he kind of lost the dressing room as well.
Well, listen, Johnny, in terms of talking about powerful dressing rooms, I don't think there's been a more powerful one than Chelsea over the years in terms of that they can get rid of managers as such. It seems that way. Obviously, I know a lot of people don't really side with Mourinho, but when he got sacked that second time at Chelsea, I thought that was disgusting in terms of how those players, I was so angry with them that they got their way and that the decision had been made. But if you talk about experienced players getting rid of an inexperienced manager, it's not even that. Those experienced players before got rid of World Cup winners in Scolari, serial winners in Ancelotti. Possibly Ancelotti was the one that the players liked, were annoyed that he went. That listen, we'll see it all the time. Players now have a line to the owners. They do, in a way that they shouldn't, in my opinion, because I think if you've got problems, you should go straight to the manager and deal with it that way. But there's no doubt that Frank would have flexed his muscles, because if you think about Frank's career as a player, he wasn't the most gifted individual. He scaled the heights that he did through sheer endeavour, hard work, attitude, commitment. And if anyone was to drop below that, and he would be the first to tell him, and I think a few of them didn't like it.
I'm like you, Gary. I'm kind of half sympathetic towards Lampard, because I think it's just the stupidity of the modern game and the whim of an owner like Abramovich that this should happen. From my perspective, if you put your faith in a manager with so little experience as he had after one season at Derby, you can't. Lampard didn't even have one proper season in terms of players that he could have signed. But at the same time, you're like, well, yeah. I guess it's kind of going back to, that situation with Abramovich. You know exactly what you're getting yourself in for, and the incumbent does as well. He's probably not expecting to be there any more than 2 years.
But initially, when you get that opportunity, Frank Lampard, I don't think you can look at him, because even when he left Frank Lampard, he said, thank you for the opportunity. And I think he's right to do that. It's the first time we've ever seen Abramovich do a personal letter of thanks to the manager, an outgoing manager, because of Frank's iconic status. But I think you're right. I think Frank initially goes in there, does a brilliant job last year in terms of these young players coming through and giving them an opportunity. But let's not forget, these are the best young players in the country. These are not like just youngsters and suddenly you get an opportunity. These are unbelievably gifted young players. But I think the real problem for Frank was that then the owners backed him massively financially. And if you're not performing after that type of investment, you're always going to be vulnerable, no matter how iconic you are at that football club.
Yeah, I think the most striking thing about it is, and you have to trust that some of the reporting was accurate, and it did seem to be some of the pieces, like, because a couple of weeks back it suggested what was happening with Lampard, but so some of those same reports even claimed as far back as last August, people in Chelsea were starting to sort of prepare, which is sort of extraordinary, really, when you consider, like we talk about how Manchester United were so poor in the Champions League. It's a very good point. And I think didn't Chelsea maybe top their group, or certainly they had a very strong Champions League group performance, and could have, I think, gone top around that time, and yet it changed very quickly. But it does seem like wheels were sort of turning in the background all the time. And look, there is a lot of stuff that seems to have come out which would suggest that maybe he got off on the wrong foot, or didn't have a great relationship with some of his players. And as Gary says, maybe what he was asking them was a factor in that. But either way, it's a very Chelsea story. It always seems to, I made this point during the week to Joe, you always get these very well-sourced, big internal pieces about Chelsea when a manager leaves. The players didn't take to such and such a manager. I mean, I suppose there was times when Lampard was probably part of that himself.
No doubt,
and it was always other players, but you always knew that Terry and Lampard were very influential behind it all. Yeah. But as Johnny said, like, you go in with your eyes open to some degree. Like it's clear that Chelsea had reservations for some time, and you have to assume that's based on something. But like, you sort of wonder, like, as a sort of a broader point of like where Chelsea goes, because you read about Thomas Tuchel and some very interesting pieces from people who know him, and like, he is quite viewed as someone who's quite dictatorial to some degree. Can be quite forthright in how he deals with people, and like that at Chelsea can really go both ways very quickly, can't it? So like, it's you're sort of whatever about Chelsea's shelf life for the 2 years anyway, or less than 2 years, because no one has done the 2 years since Mourinho. It's sort of a sense of
no soul.
Yeah.
But you know what, John? Right, it's incredible that these managers, and you're quite right, you go in with your eyes open. And you must know that the history of Chelsea, Roman Abramovich, this is his 14th permanent manager that he's appointed. But yet managers get in there successful and suddenly think they can flex their muscles and challenge them. I think Antonio Conte going in, doing brilliantly to win the league that first season. And then suddenly that summer thinking, right now, I'm the big man. I want this, I want that. And Chelsea just go, doesn't work like that here. And so the confrontational Tuchel, who may well have took on the director of football, Leonardo, the Brazilian at PSG, had his issues with a hierarchy at Dortmund. He must know you do not take on these Chelsea owners. They just won't have it.
Well, maybe he's learned. Will he improve these players, Gary? I suppose that's the key thing.
Yeah, he's a very good coach. Yeah, no doubt about that. Even the setup of his team, I'm looking at it was good. I know they didn't score a goal, but I like the fact that he played the three centre halves and then wingers, really. I know Chilwell essentially considered fullback, but he's a winger. His strength is going forward. Hudson-Odoi then in that right side position. They played so high and advanced. What that then allows, John, is the likes of Ziyech to come in off that right side on his left foot, his strong left foot, and open up the goal. Havertz on the other side, left side, coming onto his right foot. I know he's both-footed. And you suddenly think, yeah, the distances are right. You can understand why they dominated the game. It does look good. There's no doubt this is a top-class manager.
Just going to say, Conor Hourihane, by the way, scored for Swansea 2-0.
Brilliant.
About half-time away to Rotherham, and Man City 1-0 up against Sheffield United in the Premier League. Palace 0, Wolves 0, West Brom 0, Fulham 1. Darragh O'Shea taken off after just over 20 minutes. Carlin Grant coming on.
Maybe we'll talk about it after 4.
Yeah, after 4, yeah.
It's just Big Sam has made a tactical reshuffle and taken Darragh O'Shea off after 20-something minutes. So it's not great, I would assume, for a player's confidence, albeit in a big game. But maybe we'll talk about it after.
Yeah, we'll talk about it after 4. We've got to go to the news soon. 53106 for the text messages. Thomas Tuchel, I'm sure, has learned his lessons from Dortmund. I got the sense from reading the literature I did as well, Gary, that he might have been a bit softer at Paris Saint-Germain. He did bring them to a Champions League final. That had never happened before. What, though, are the expectations for him? Does he have a free pass until May? And is it really a case of you got to win something next season?
No, there's no free pass. He'd definitely have to be in the Champions League. I wouldn't be surprised at any decision made on it, but there's no free pass. And I don't think he'll want one as well. And I think we're talking about that style of play. Initially, you see it straight away at Wolves. And I think that is probably one of the failings of Frank Lampard, because initially when he takes over at Chelsea, he totally ripped it up in terms of Sarri's style, that slow, methodical build-up through Jorginho. And the Chelsea fans were so bored of it, even though the success in terms of his win rate was considerably higher. Suddenly Frank comes out, it's more dynamic, it's early passes forward, more energy. But I think towards the end with Frank, and I think the reason why it was difficult to see what his actual template was, what he was trying to achieve, was the fact that he had so many players of different types, and he was trying to shoehorn different ones in. There would have been pressure, no doubt, from above in terms of, we've bought you these players, and I wonder how many of those players, John, to be perfectly honest, were his choices. Then they have to play. I mean, we've seen this before with Shevchenko at Chelsea early on, just bought and, get him in the team, deal with it. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. I think with Tuchel, you'll definitely see, and you'll be able to clearly see what they're trying to achieve.
Chelsea fans, 53106, are you disappointed about Frank Lampard, the club legend's departure? Is Lampard departing too soon, Gary, in a way, too early for his reputation to be completely damaged? Can he have a second coming in management?
Yeah, he can do. But John, I'd ask the question, what will he do now? Will he have that desire to be a manager? Because where do you go now? I mean, when you start off as a player or as a manager, there's a summit that you're aiming for, whether it's to play for Ireland as a player or to manage Ireland. Suddenly he's got his dream job, Chelsea. Now, what's his motivation now? Because Frank is very articulate in terms of being in the media. Everyone will be desperate to get him on their shows because he's so insightful in terms of how he delivers it as well. I think financially, there's no reason for him. It's just whether or not he still has that desire. I'll be fascinated to see how his managerial career goes from here and whether or not we will see him again.
I think it's very important, JD, that you learn from things that went wrong as well. And Lampard will have time to reflect on this. Dan and I would have discussed this a bit last week, that tetchy exchange with the journalist, which for me betrayed the fact that he was under pressure. Probably stuff like that, he'll reflect on that and say, maybe, I could have done that differently. And hopefully, I don't think his stock has fallen all that much from this, because people have to be cognizant of the fact that he's a very young manager in a situation where most managers just get sacked anyway.
We don't have much, we have about 2 minutes left, but Gary, this is interesting for Steven Gerrard, his next move. Because he now is probably looking around and going, I've got to be careful where I make my next move after Rangers.
Oh, well, listen, we know what he thinks his next move is. It's Liverpool. It's whether or not Klopp moves aside. Because if you look at Gerrard in terms of what he's doing with Rangers, and maybe I've got a little bit more insight in terms of what type of coaching he's doing as such, it's a template of Jurgen Klopp. He's learned under him with the Liverpool underage, and everything he's trying to achieve is based on similar ethos in terms of what he's learned under Klopp. There's no surprise about that. Why wouldn't you? He's a brilliant manager. And obviously what Steven Gerrard has done at Rangers, it's galling for us, isn't it, as such? But you have to admire what he's done there. So I think his next move is Liverpool, but it's just whether or not he'll stay with Rangers, and is there a job then that bridges that he goes to before Liverpool, because then you are putting yourselves under pressure to perform, because if you get that wrong, then suddenly those Liverpool fans are going, really? Do we want him as the next manager? Fascinating.
Yeah, we got to take a break, folks. 53106 your text messages. Everton 0, Newcastle 2 in the Premier League earlier on. Crystal Palace 0, Wolves 0 at half-time. Manchester City 1, Sheffield United 0 at half-time. Gabriel Jesus with the goal, set to send City 4 points clear of Man United at the top of the Premier League. It's West Brom 0, Fulham 1. It could be a huge result for Scott Parker today. 5:30 kick-off Arsenal against Man U, and 8 o'clock start for Southampton against Aston Villa. In the Championship, full-time, Norwich 0, Middlesbrough 0 from earlier on, the leaders Norwich. Birmingham City 1, Coventry 1 is the latest score. Blackburn 0, Luton 0. It's Brentford 2, Wickham 2, Cardiff City 1 0, Millwall 1. It is Derby County 1, Bristol City 0. That is the latest score from the Championship. Also Huddersfield Town 1, Stoke City 1. That is the latest score. It's Nottingham Forest 0, Barnsley 0. Also in the Championship, Rotherham 0, Swansea 2. As I said, Conor Hourihane scoring for Swansea. And that one, I'm just getting the Celtic 2-1 down at half-time. I've just seen it against St Mirren. Oh, we'll be back after the news.
News Talk Extra, our email newsletter straight to your inbox. Sign up now at newstalk.com/extra.
At Power City, we have a wide range of DeLonghi portable heaters. Save on your bills by heating the room you're in rather than the whole house. To find your ideal DeLonghi heating solution, call to Power City today.
Psychology, performance analysis, sports therapy and coaching all contribute to elite performance in sport. At Portobello Institute, we offer full-time and blended learning honours degrees in each of these sporting disciplines. Affordable and accessible online study, small group lectures and practicals are now enrolling at Portobello Institute. So talk to an expert about our full-time and blended learning sports degree courses at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
The Sky Sale is now on. And who doesn't need a pick-me-up at this time of year? So get award-winning Sky TV and our best ever Wi-Fi with ultra-fast broadband together from just €50 a month for 12 months.
Well, that's nice.
That's a feel-good saving from us. So save big on the Sky Sale. Search Sky 50 today. Offer ends 11th of February. New Sky customers only. Availability subject to location, minimum term and further terms apply. For more info, see sky.ie/speeds.
Go for that run? Or maybe just run the bath. Every day we spend lots of time considering our options. It's worth considering your options here too. Consider AIG, the insurer that will provide savings on great value car insurance. Like right now, we're giving a 20% discount when you buy online at aig.ie/car. Consider AIG. Normal underwriting acceptance criteria apply. Minimum premium of €330 plus levies apply. Applies to new AIG direct car customers only. AIG Europe SA is authorised by the Luxembourg Ministry of Finance and supervised by the Luxembourg Commissioner for Insurance and is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules.
As Ireland's best-selling van, the Peugeot partner ticks a lot of boxes. And with up to 1,000 kg payload, it carries them too. Choose from 2 body lengths, 1 or 2 sliding side doors, up to 3 seats, 5 levels of spec, and safety features like dynamic rear vision, which helps to eliminate blind spots. With hands-free Bluetooth and Peugeot's unique iCockpit interior, the Peugeot partner is your perfect business partner. For details and flexible payment options, see Peugeot.ie.
Thousands of students don't have access to the right technology in their home. Tech to Students, a partnership between Camara Ireland and Trinity Access, urgently needs used laptops and Chromebooks to support students most in need. Visit esb.ie/tech to students to find out how you can help. Proudly supported by ESB, Energy for Generations.
Guaranteed Irish business members are working hard to support jobs, communities and help our economy recover and prosper beyond COVID and Brexit.
Galway member CallPal, Ireland's leading professional call answering company, have a dedicated team of professional PAs and assists over 200 businesses nationwide, providing exceptional customer service. Contact CallPal on 1890 511 400 or visit callpal.ie today to start your free trial. Let's get talking and start our recovery with guaranteedirish.ie. Altogether better.
Screen Time.
This week on Screen Time, I talked to legendary Irish casting director Ros Hubbard about casting The Lord of the Rings, discovering Colin Farrell and Kate Winslet. Mark Ryle is here with all the week's new releases, and I chat to erstwhile singer Mary Coughlin about her favourite movie.
Screen Time with John Fardy.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now, or tune in this evening from 6
on News Talk. Across Ireland. This is the IMRO Radio Awards National Station of the Year. This is News Talk.
It's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Burke. The Taoiseach says the European Commission's U-turn on plans to invoke Article 19 has avoided reciprocal action from Britain. It's after plans were set out to block vaccine exports from EU states in the Commission's row with pharma firm AstraZeneca. That was met with anger from politicians north and south of the border here and calls from unionists for restrictions on trade across the Irish Sea to be dropped. Micheál Martin believes swift action last night means that can be avoided.
I think he understands the importance of the protocol and the need for the protocol to work in the interests of what we've all agreed. And that is why it was so important that the European Commission reversed the decision last evening, because I think that gives sufficient space to the British government not to have to respond in a hurried manner, but rather to continue to engage with Ireland and with the EU and with Northern Ireland politicians in terms of the fine-tuning of the protocol.
Further meetings to discuss the 2021 Leaving Cert are to take place next week. The Irish Times reports the Irish Second-Level Students' Union has called for students to be given a choice between calculated grades and sitting the June exams. Guidance Counsellor Brian Mooney says it wouldn't be fair to hold a traditional Leaving Cert this year.
As the COVID outbreak numbers decrease, we will see when it is possible to put children back in the classroom, and specifically 17 to 19-year-olds who do the Leaving Cert. At that point in time, it will become evident whether it is possible to have a traditional Leaving Cert. I think the build-up of project work, orals and the written papers and the amount of time they've lost will make it absolutely impossible to have a fair test in June.
A number of Irish tourists have been found to be in breach of COVID travel laws at a ski resort in Austria. 96 foreign tourists from a number of states are facing fines of over €2,000. The rules in Saint-Anton allow ski lifts to open, but hotels are closed to international visitors. The town's mayor says some of the tourists registers as job seekers to get around the restrictions, even though no work is available. And a woman's being questioned by Gardaí in connection with the murder of a County Meath couple 6 years ago. Willie Maughan and Anna Vaslavani, who was pregnant at the time, went missing from Gormanstown in April 2015. The case was later upgraded to a murder investigation, although their bodies have never been found. A woman in her mid-30s has been arrested and she's being questioned at Ashbourne Garda Station today. It's 2 minutes past 4.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA, you can find our best discounts on car insurance online. Go to the aa.ie.
Wet and windy for now, but turning dry for most of the evening with a hard frost in some parts. Outbreaks of rain will return later in the west and southwest with some sleet and snow. Overnight lows of 3 degrees to 1 below. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 o'clock in the company of the former Republic of Ireland defender Gary Breen, the football correspondent of the Irish Independent Dan McDonnell, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward to talk about the beautiful game. Our coverage brought to you with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. You can text us on 53106 or tweet us at Off the Ball. You can listen on News Talk, but also watch us on the Off the Ball social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, on YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Let's get some halftime reports. Manchester City against Sheffield United. Darren Stanage.
Man City 1, Sheffield United 0 at the break. So City leading at half-time, but despite an early goal, the floodgates yet to open. Really good work from Ferran Torres down the right-hand side. Cut inside at the byline, picked out Gabriel Jesus, who had time to slot home. After that, a couple of half chances for City, really. A tame silver header and Jesus shot going wide. Nothing to worry City at the other end, though. A tame effort from Brewster, simple for Edison. But Chris Wilder won't be too disappointed by this scoreline. Man City 1, Sheffield United 0.
It's Crystal Palace 0, Wolves 0, and the report in from West Brom and Fulham. This is at the Hawthorns. Abigail Davies.
Fulham are leading West Brom by a goal to nil thanks to Bobby Decordova-Reid's strike in the 10th minute here at the Hawthorns. Fulham have had the better of the possession, patient build-up play. They've looked at danger with their through balls in behind West Brom's defence for the likes of Decordova-Reid and Lookman to run onto. They really could be 2 or 3 goals to the good here. West Brom have been limited to playing a few long balls forward, but they're sitting so deep that there's often nobody there higher up the pitch to get on the end of them. It's West Brom 0, Fulham 1 at the break.
53106, Frank Lampard 100% knew what he was getting himself into.
Yeah.
It astounds me that he actually thought he was able for the job, given his inexperience. A certain amount of arrogance, perhaps. Publicly blaming players will lose you the dressing room. That is from Mairead in Cork. Lampard for Celtic, says Darren. Well, it might be a better option at the moment because they're 2-1 down to St Mirren. And Daniel, I think you did a profile on this recently, the Irish takeover of St Mirren. But Jim Goodwin in charge, Conor McCarthy, Joe Shaughnessy, Dylan Connolly, Jamie McGrath. Yeah, I think there would have been Aidan Fitzmaurice, some of my colleagues who did. But yeah, I mean, St Mirren are really, they're the most, I'm very well aware of Celtic fans out there who are tearing their hair out, and I know Off the Ball's own Enda and a few other people that would, but I have no stake in the game, and I wouldn't mind if St Mirren went on and scored a couple more, to be honest, because it's a real, really good Irish story there. I mean, Jim Goodwin, sort of a member of Brian Kerr's team in '98, the under-16 side, and he ended up working as a part-time manager in Scotland and has really built his name up there with St Mirren. And yeah, he is shop smart, he took Conor McCarthy and Jamie McGrath from the league here last year, and they're both playing every week. I mean, McGrath's been a revelation. So yeah, I mean they beat Rangers recently. They knocked Rangers out of I think it was the League Cup. They ended Rangers' chances of sort of domestic domination this year, as much as they're going to win the league. Really, they're a good side, and it's a good story. And not what Celtic fans want to hear, but listen, hopefully St Mirren go on and do it, because Celtic's league season now is almost irrelevant as it is. I mean, Peter Lawwell stepping down. Yeah. There's a lot going on at the club at the moment, and all of these games, it must be a strange one for the players and sort of managers, management, because everyone knows it's over. So that there's sort of this is sort of jump time for them, really, in some respects. Yeah, they need to just completely start all over again, don't they? Rip it up and start again, Gary, at Celtic in the summer.
Well, listen, that's a difficult one. It's real frustration, isn't it, in terms of what was supposed to be an iconic season. I just don't know where they go from here, to be perfectly honest. You're right. People will be linked to the job. You say about Frank Lampard. I've heard about Eddie Howe. It was in the papers over here being linked to it. So I just don't know. I don't know where to go from here. Yeah, we got just a text on Conor Hourihane, who scored again today. I'm a Villa fan. For me, Conor will be remembered fondly by most Villa fans as a player that helped Villa get promoted, have a day at Wembley, and most importantly, keep them in the Premiership. Brilliant servant in my book. It leaves me with a sour taste that he's got to move to Wales in the middle of a pandemic. He's still a valuable player in my book. Dean Smith, far too inflexible in who he picks, and there's zero rotation. Still a great season, though. That is Will in Dunleary in Dublin. What do you think about that, guys? Conor Hourihane moving to Swansea. Well, I mean, listen, he's going to Wales. He's not exactly been sent off into Siberia or something, to be fair. It's probably a 2.5 hour drive. But but anyway, aside from that, the fact that he's gone to the one thing I would say about Conor Hourihane is that when Aston Villa were promoted, it's probably a reflection of his status, that when Aston Villa were promoted, he was an important player, but he wasn't someone who you could say, he drove them to promotion or anything like that. He was a member of a sort of a well-paid squad who eventually got over the line. But now he's gone to Swansea, who are in the automatic promotion shake-up, very much in there. And okay, his goal during the week was a free kick that went straight in. But he's obviously been viewed as a big player for them, someone who can help them get over the line. And he's going to, he's gone in there and made an instant impact, and probably is being perceived probably as one of the top midfielders in the Championship in terms of where he's going to be at now. And that's not insignificant given where he was a couple of years ago. Now, listen, I think he turns 30 this year, so you can't talk about him anymore about potential. This is a big part of his career now, and it's obviously a knockback for him that he hadn't played since November. He can't afford to waste a year. And it does seem that Dean Smith wanted him to be around the club. He was still on the bench every week. It wasn't like he'd been bombed. He just wasn't in their plans in terms of getting into a side that's doing very well, Villa. So he could have stayed. He could have stuck it out and sort of taken his good money or whatever. And many others would have done that in that situation, knowing that he probably would have got a chance at some stage. But it does seem and it does seem to be that type of personality that he just said, no, I want to go and play. Yeah. And who knows? It could, listen, I know it's only a loan move, so you don't know what happens. But if he can sort of propel Swansea to promotion,
he might find himself back there as an important, like a more important player in a Premier League team than he proved to be at Villa ultimately. So you have to sort of admire it and hope it pays off for him.
Speaking of Irish talent, John Joe Patrick Finn for Getafe. His late father was Irish. He plays in midfield. They're trying to get him into the Republic of Ireland setup. Do we have chances of getting him to declare?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, we often talk about sort of, say, eligibility cases on this program, and listen, Gary is obviously being sort of would be quite vocal on this topic at times. Because obviously there's a sense of someone like Declan Rice and Jack Grealish and how the system has been played. But what you find now is that there are sort of slightly unusual cases. Someone like, say, even Ryan Johansson, who grew up in Luxembourg to Irish and Swedish parents, and wouldn't necessarily have that sort of clear community definition as such of where he was from. And John Joe Patrick Finn is someone who is living in Spain with an Irish father from Ballyhonus who passed away. I think the mother's side is Cameroonian and Cameroon. So and he's also, I think England have explored his eligibility, but I'm not actually sure if it's confirmed that he's eligible for them, because he would have spent some time there. And so you have a case where you can understand why someone like that would be in a sort of a slight quandary, because he has all sort of different sides to his background and to his upbringing. And it does appear at the moment that the FAI have made a strong pitch to hopefully try and persuade him to go their way. He hasn't really committed to anyone at international level. He's left it very open. But I mean, he is a sort of it's quite unusual that you have him in his name. Like, you have a John Joe Patrick Finn has been playing in the Spanish, in the Liga this year, albeit for 5-10 minutes here and there off the bench. But he did play in the Copa del Rey. I think, I'll be honest, I haven't seen him really play at all. But from listening to people who have, he's been sort of out wide and stuff in the games. And Jim Crawford, 21's manager, mentioned this during the week, that he actually wants to play in central midfield. And the FAI have sort of said to him, listen, come in, come into us, and we're happy to try and play you in central midfield. So clearly they feel like he's someone they really want to get on board. But it's not quite your typical case here where you feel like someone might be using you to get somewhere else or something like that. He seems to have a lot more of a unclear identity about where he wants to go with it.
Speaking of, go on.
Because he played actually in the Galway Cup a few years ago as a guest, and the story goes that there was one of the Irish underage managers there, but he didn't quite rate him strong enough to get a trial. And Nathan Murphy's dad, Micheál Murphy's been on about this kid for a while, because there's nothing that goes on in underage football in Mayo that Micheál Murphy doesn't know about. And this kid he's been over and back to Ireland many times, so he has a really, really strong Irish connection. And I think when he came to Ireland, he's such a cool looking character. He had this amazing long kind of curly hair. The kids were just mesmerised by him, and they all want to be around him. But he's now grown into this really, really strong athlete. And the Irish interest, maybe it's coming maybe a small bit late, because he could have sort of been brought up maybe a few years ago or whatever. But that's kind of by the by. He does have really, really strong Irish connections. I think his granddad is still in Ireland, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But it's definitely something that the likes of Tom Moan and the underage managers have been well aware of him for some time. And you can't knock what he's achieving. To be playing La Liga at even peripheral, at his age is really striking. And it's the fact that he is profoundly, and he's by all accounts profoundly proud of his Irish roots, connections to the west of Ireland as well. And it's just a great story. I can't wait to see him hopefully in an Ireland jersey in due course. But I'd like to see him play as well in Spain. I'm like Dan, I haven't seen him play yet. But the more players that we can have, we've John Joe Patrick Finn in Spain, we've Jack Byrne in Cyprus today. It'd be nice to get a few players sprinkled around Europe as the years develop.
Speaking of Ireland and the FAI, Dean Kiely joined Stephen Kelly's set up as a goalkeeping coach this week. Gary, you were his teammate. You went to the World Cup with Dean.
Yeah, I did. He was a brilliant teammate. I think the frustration for him certainly was that he got so few caps. But one of the games I do vividly remember, John, is the away leg in the playoff against Turkey. And Dean had to come into that game, massive game at the time, the second leg. And initially, when you have a game of that magnitude and someone comes in who's relatively raw, there's always a worry that you're going to have to hold their hand a little bit, coach them through it. And in a game of that magnitude, you can't really do that because you've got to look after your own game, such as the pressure of the match. But he was exceptional on the day. He really was. There was none of that needed. He was bossing the situation behind us, great vocal presence. And the moment he came into the Ireland squad, he was a brilliant addition to it. He really was a real leader, a very good goalkeeper. But that aside, in terms of his playing career, no problem. It's his coaching career now. 10 years now he's been coaching as a goalkeeping coach. He's a quality coach. He's at the real top level. And I think this is a brilliant addition to our coaching team. I think Stephen Kenny, obviously, you make a decision. I don't think he knows Dean particularly well. So there's always that worry that you're bringing someone in that you don't know 100%. Well, listen, let me just put that to bed straight away. This guy is so loyal. He will work tirelessly for that manager. He will sit down with him and say, well, OK, in fact, I would imagine that Dean interviewed Stephen in terms of the role. There's no doubt about it in my mind in terms of, well, listen, what do you expect from me? This is what I want to do. But underneath all of that, John, will be, listen, you're the manager. You tell me how you want this team to play, and I will coach that goalkeeper to do just that. He will then sit down with them goalkeepers and say, what do you need? What do you need to perform to your better your ability? And he will do everything possible. It's a brilliant addition. It really is.
Go on.
In terms of, like, is this actually something that could work out well for Stephen Kenny? Because there was that slight Alan Kelly sort of, slight doubts in the background and so forth. Is this something that, as all these bad things that have happened to Ireland, the way you speak about him there, Gary, is he someone that could energise the place?
Yeah, without a doubt. He's got great character, John. I think you'd love him if you were in his company. Lads will love him. Very, very professional, very serious about his craft in terms of not relying on his sterling career as a player, but just about his coaching ability, but as a real good personality. I don't know. Listen, I might have heard a couple of those murmurings, but not firsthand in terms of Alan. I wouldn't say anything disparaging about him. All I can talk to you about is Dean in terms of coming into the building. And I think them goalkeepers are going to love him. Darren Randolph was an apprentice at Charlton when Dino was so highly thought of as the number one there. He was a brilliant performer in the Premier League for Charlton. So Darren will know him. Of course he will. And will admire his work ethic and stuff like that. But as much as we talk about people's playing careers, that's great. And I think he'll be desperate to achieve what he would be frustrated not to have done as a player. If he can do that as a coach now, he'd be delighted. He really will be. And I think his dad will be buzzing around Leamington Spa at the Irish Centre, knowing that his son's back in and around the Ireland game again.
I gather that he did make a sort of a strong pitch for himself in the sense that he was very enthusiastic about coming in to do it. And I mean, of course, anyone would be, I guess, but I think given that he has a job at Crystal Palace at the moment, and he's not someone who's out of work in need of a job, if you know what I mean. But I gather he sort of he was very enthusiastic, hugely enthusiastic about coming in, and that was, I think that's great, isn't it? It was quite striking. Yeah, I think so. And you're right. I don't think there's any relationship with Stephen Kenny at all. I think they might have met at a game a couple of years back and had a chat, but pretty much not. I mean, maybe with Keith Andrews, I wonder would there be a bit more. Maybe, in terms of they would have come across each other at West Brom as such. But I think more than anything, in terms of not knowing him, but I think his reputation goes before him. Listen, this is a guy who Roy Hodgson's taken everywhere. And you think how experienced a manager he is, that he makes sure that he gets someone of Dean's ability on the coaching staff. So, but you're right, Dan, because coaching is 24/7. It really so intense that in the Premier League, but then when you have an opportunity in that international break to come away from it, recharge and maybe spend a bit more time with your family, but he's discarded all that, and he's a real family man, but he's pushed that aside to say, no, this is an opportunity I just can't turn down to coach my national team. And I just think it suits everyone. I think it's a really, really positive step. And I think Stephen Kenny, for all the difficulties he's had, I think he may have stumbled across something really good to look forward to.
Okay.
As well with Kelleher there, coming up. I think that little squad within the squad is probably going to be an exciting place to be for Ireland going forward.
But Johnny, do you know, even in that, and we highlighted this, after that England game, the next game, I can't remember what it was, but it was so noticeable that Shane Duffy was standing there wanting the ball, and Randolph was saying, listen, he was having the old cop in a deaf and not listening to him, calling for the ball, not giving him the ball. So straight away, I'm looking at that and this is mixed messages. What's happening here? Either you're playing out from the back, or you're not. Either way, your goalkeeper and your main centre-half, who have been our two best performers, we're on totally different wavelengths. There'll be none of that with Dean Kiely.
Yeah, and to call our colleague here at OTB, he's watching the Celtic game. He says, also Irish note, Shane Duffy cannot start for Ireland in March. An astonishing drop. That is worrying.
But we should. I mean, like, the irony is, we probably would have spoken about if Shane Duffy's not going to play, who might? And like Darragh O'Shea is obviously one that would spring to mind. But it does seem like he's had a tough one today. Just in the sense that he's been hooked in the first half of a game, which there's no real positive spin on that at all. I know that it looks like West Brom played a back three today. He was the left of a back three. They've obviously struggled in recent weeks. Their home form has been dreadful. And like, it is such a big game that, you know, taking off a defender and bringing on an attacker early could be seen as a statement of intent. But obviously, it's never nice for the fall guy in that scenario. So you're just hoping, because he's obviously been on a real upward curve, Darragh O'Shea. He had a very good relationship with Bilic. We think about it, a year ago, Darragh O'Shea, I think he made his first championship start ever, you know, a year ago, and has gone from, in the space of a year, to be like a Premier League regular, play for Ireland. But you can't keep going up all the time. You're going to have setbacks and bumps in the road. And we probably would have felt that, you know, someone like Sam Allardyce going there, you know, it'd be a good experience for him to work with someone who's obviously, his teams are regarded as quite sort of solid and organised, but he's failed to bring that in so far to West Brom, and he's clearly reaching around a bit. And I don't know, sometimes you wonder, like, you know, Darragh O'Shea is a very well regarded professional. Is it just easy to make them the sacrificial lamb sometimes, or was it just a big tactical call and that was it? But it does seem like his form has struggled a small bit in recent weeks. But obviously just not ideal, because if you are going to take Shane Duffy out of the side, and I can understand like Gary's point there about even just style, and Enda's just point about basic form. Okay, John Egan is obviously safe and very important to how Stephen Kenny wants to play, and he hasn't had him really since Slovakia. But who's the other one? I mean, is it a galvanised Kieran Clark more so? That's an alternative. Like, but anyway, we'll see. I mean, I don't know, Gary. Like, it doesn't sound great to be substituted in the first half of the game.
Just before we've got a goal in that game, West Brom against Fulham. Gale Davies.
West Bromwich Albion have managed to find the equaliser. Big Sam will be a lot happier with how his side has started the second half. From the whistle, the ball was played out to the left, then it was whipped into the box. Kyle Bartley was there to tap it past the keeper. As simple a goal as the centre-back is likely to score. That's the first goal West Brom have scored in 5 home games. That's much more pleasing for Sam Allardyce. It's West Brom 1, Fulham 1.
Manchester City 1, Sheffield United 0, Palace 1, Wolves 0 now in the Premier League. You had a question for Gary there, Dan?
Well, I was just asking, I mean, listen, Sam's obviously a genius now that they've pulled it back level, and he'll tell us that afterwards. But, like, it's obviously, I mean, it's not a great experience for a defender to be taken off, Gary. I don't know if you've ever encountered that.
Well, you're right, you're right there, Dan. It's more often than not, he's the young one, isn't it? You just take him off and say, listen, like, this not for you this day, but it's a difficult one. 22 goals they conceded at home. 22 goals at home in the last, 5 games before today. So, Big Sam, he's just not getting it right. But there's a misconception about Big Sam, is that when he goes into these clubs, be it Palace or Sunderland, that it's an instant turnaround. It's not. At Sunderland and at Palace, it takes time. And this is so worrying. I don't think they'll have time. But in terms of Darragh, in terms of playing, I think he'll be all right. I really do. You're right. He's got a great reputation in terms of his work ethic, how much he wants to learn. And I think he'll learn an awful lot under Big Sam. I think he's a brilliant defensive coach. And I think there'll be positions for him to play, Dan. He'll play fullback more often than not, even if they do get a centre-half in, which looks like they don't look like he will do in terms of the time frame with the window closing. But you're right. I think it's difficult when you're losing games. It really is. But he's a young player. He's playing in the Premier League. It's part of his learning curve.
Do you know what the thing is, JD? Is just think of this in recent days. How many positions in the Ireland team? Ireland plays Serbia on the 24th of March, right? 7 weeks away. I'd struggle to name 3 players with absolute confidence where they'll be playing at the moment. Stephen Kenny has so many issues with who he's going to play here. Centre back, right back, midfield, up front, left, right. What
goalkeeper?
It's goalkeeper even. There's literally, like, given the 2020 that we've had, and now we've had a big break without a game, ended the 8 games with 1 goal and, struggling a bit towards the end, and he goes straight into the Serbia game. It's hard to believe an Irish team could be so hard to predict in terms of, and not only that, he has to replace Damien Duff as well. He's replaced the goalkeeping coach. I'm thinking about midfield, with Jason Knight doing so well. Malumbi will probably start playing games, but Duffy's situation, to me, he probably won't play now. I think Seamus Coleman might get the nod ahead of Doherty, but I honestly haven't a breeze, and it's like, what must the man be thinking at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a good, fair point, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
No, there isn't. And you're right. It will be. Even in this 7 weeks, Johnny, things will change again. I just generally believe we don't, and I don't believe we ever have. We don't pick that Ireland team based on club form. Pick the system you want to play and put those players in to do that. There'll be some tough calls now because, of course, Randolph is exceptional goalkeeper for us.
So can you make a call then as Stephen Kenny and say, I'm going to put my faith in young players here? Or do you just completely throw that out the window?
No, it's not about young players. It's not about their age, Johnny. It's just who fits that team, that template the best.
See, Jason Knight might be almost our form midfielder going into that game. Yeah. I'm speculating here. Jason Knight has practically no experience whatsoever at international level. Do you then bring in a player who's not playing for a Premier League club or whatever?
Well, the thing about Jason, sorry, guys, I mean, this is actually a topical point. The thing about Jason Knight, you get the sense that if they're going to play Jason Knight, say, the feeling I get, it might be someone like James McCarthy that might be needed. Because Knight is all energy and he's box to box. So if you're going to play someone like him, you need a certain type of player with him. I see James McCarthy, who actually, his father passed away, and I think he took some time out after that, and he's lost his momentum. I see he's gone off at half-time injured today, against Wolves with a hip injury, it seems, or certainly an injury of some description. So these are the points, you can sit in a room and talk about, what you might want to do and what systems you might do and so on. And then something like that happens, and then, there's obviously all those midfielders, there's obviously combinations that work. Apparently Josh Cullen is doing very well in Anderlecht at the moment too. Yeah. More different type of player, in terms of what he might offer. So these are the variables that that in some respects, even I'm sure as management team, as Gary says, a lot can happen in 7 weeks, that you can plan it now, but it could be rendered sort of irrelevant by events in the next period of time.
Dan, imagine all the planning that Stephen Kenny has done in the lead up to getting the job from Mick, and he was quite vocal. We're going to play this way. I'm going to bring all the youth team in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change the perception of Irish people, footballers in the world. The reality is when you're actually got to pick that team of what's available, all that kind of philosophy, to a certain extent, goes out the window. You've got to produce a team with what you've got. Now, what is very topical, you're right there, in terms of Jason Knight. There's no doubt in my mind that Conor Hourihane is I can't sit on the bench at Villa when the likes of Knight is doing so well at Derby. He's going to potentially take my place in the Ireland team. Those type of thoughts come into your mind as a player. They really do. It's not just about you. Of course, he's a great lad, Conor, wants to play. He's honest. Getting to his 30s, he's not going to be sitting on anyone's bench, even if it's in the Premier League, wants to play. But he will be mindful that other people who could potentially take his place are playing regularly and are catching the eye.
Yeah, and Jason Knight is playing for Derby today. They're 1-0 up against Bristol City in the Championship. This is the other scores before we go to the break. Everton 0, Newcastle 2, a full time from earlier on. It's Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0, Manchester City 1, Sheffield United 0 in the Premier League. West Brom now ahead 2-1 against Fulham. 68 minutes gone. 5:30 kick-off. Arsenal, Man U. Southampton, Villa at 8 o'clock. In the Championship, the leaders Norwich drew 0-0 earlier on with Middlesbrough. Birmingham 1, Coventry City 1. It's Blackburn 0, Luton Town 0. Brentford 4, Wickham 2. It's Cardiff 0, Millwall 1. Huddersfield 1, Stoke 1. Nottingham Forest 0, Barnsley 0. It's Rotherham 1, Swansea 2 with Conor Hourihane on the mark, as we said. And Sheffield Wednesday 1, Preston 0. And it is still Celtic 1, St Mirren 2. Back after this.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie. 100 Days of Walking is back.
Let's stride into 2021 as we take to the streets, the beaches, the hills and the forests, the length and breadth of the country.
To walk every day for 100 days. Supported by the Apple Green Rewards app.
With Ciara Kelly on News Talk.
Join the movement.
Vodafone's super-fast gigabit broadband is taking over. We've got gigabit broadband here. 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 But most importantly, we've got it here. Upstairs from here. And luckily, here in the next door bedroom. So you can wander from the comfort of your own sofa. Get Vodafone's super-fast gigabit broadband, now available to more people than ever before, subject to availability in selected areas. Terms apply, average speeds. See Vodafone.ie fixed terms for full terms.
Make it a really good afternoon and check out the great car insurance discounts at insuremycars.ie. Ireland's trusted car insurance specialists. For super family savings, check out insuremycars.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremycars.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
In secondary school, I really liked most of my subjects, but I especially liked maths. I loved the logic of it and how there was always a way of finding the right answer. The way Mr. Mack explained things just made it all click. I'm Lucy Nyland, and I'm hoping to share my passion for maths with my own students after I qualify as a teacher this year.
Teaching Transforms. The application closing date for CAO courses that will qualify you to become a teacher is fast approaching. For more, see gov.ie/Teaching Transforms.
Work call time again. Your top half says I'm all business. Your bottom half says old leggings and fluffy cat slippers. We don't always see the big picture or get the whole story, but at Iberdrola, we'll always tell it to you straight. That's why our customers rate us excellent on Trustpilot. We're upfront about our energy tariffs when it's time to renew and always help you choose an energy tariff that suits you best. Whether you're a new or existing customer, the only things we hide are our own old leggings and fluffy slippers. Find out more at iberdrola.ie.
At Centra, we have everything you need with lots of great offers in our Centra range. Like Centra Stillwater 9-pack 500ml, now only €2.60. Centra Homestyle Oven Chips 1.5 kilo, now only €1.40. And Centra Dishwasher Tablets 5-in-1 Lemon 30-pack, now only €1.55. Centra, live every day.
It's so important to make someone happy.
At the National Lottery, we just wanted to say thanks a million to all our players. In fact, make that 254 million, which is how much you raised for National Lottery good causes last year.
And you will be happy too.
Shh, listen. That's the sound of a quieter, cleaner future, led by Volkswagen, Ireland's best-selling car brand. Led by our all-electric carbon-neutral ID3 and ID4 models and our plug-in hybrid range. And led by all of you, joining us on our way to a zero-carbon future. Volkswagen.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 o'clock. Our coverage brought to you thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. You can text us on 53106. We're joined today by Gary Breen, the former Republic of Ireland defender, Dan McDonnell, who's the Irish Independent football correspondent, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. As well as listening on News Talk, you can watch us on the social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. The teams are in for Arsenal against Manchester United, a 5:30 kick-off at the Emirates. Bernd Leno in goal for Arsenal. A back four of Hector Bellerin, Rob Holding, David Luiz and Cedric Suarez. Midfielders, Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka, the holding midfielders. And then above that, we've got Gabriel Martinelli, Emile Smith-Rowe in the middle. And we have Nicola Pepe. And then up front on his own is Alexander Lacazette. I'm just looking for... Aubameyang is not in the squad today. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has a few personal issues and missed the game against Southampton during the week. The Manchester United team, 4-2-3-1, De Gea in goal. So we have Wan-Bissaka, Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof in the central of defence, Luke Shaw left back. And then we have, in terms of the holding players, Scott McTominay and Fred get the nod in front of the back four. Pogba is in. He's on the left of Bruno Fernandes with Marcus Rashford on the right. So they're the three. And then up front, Edinson Cavani. So Anthony Martial has to be satisfied with the place on the bench. Donny van de Beek on the bench, Greenwood on the bench, and Bailly on the bench for Manchester United. A 5:30 kick-off for that game. Just give you the scores in the Premier League. Earlier on, Everton losing 2-0 at home to Newcastle. It's Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0. And it's Manchester City, the leaders, 1, Sheffield United 0. An early goal from Gabriel Jesus. City set to go 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League. West Brom 2, Fulham 1. In the Championship, we went through the scores there just before half-time. And just before the latest update, it was Norwich 0, Middlesbrough 0. Just to give you that score as well from the Celtic game. They are still 2-1 down at home to St Mirren. Text in here on 531. Quite a good text, I thought. Surely Lampard is the perfect example of why Gerrard should not be the next Liverpool manager unless he proves himself in a better league than Scotland. Don't let emotions get in the way of the right decision. That is from Brian. Thought it was a good text, Gary.
Well, don't ask me. I'll question the level of Celtic in terms of Duffy going there initially. I won't go down that road again.
It's not a trap now, Gary. It's not a trap.
I know that. But listen, it's a massive jump, of course it is, in terms of... and there's that added thing of the pressure that you'd be under as a Liverpool icon himself. So it is difficult. Of course it is. You know, there are examples of the likes of Pep Guardiola at Barcelona who makes a massive success of it. Solskjaer struggled a little bit at times at Manchester United, but still they persevered with him. So there are challenges, of course they are. But I think ultimately you have to prove your worth for that skill set as a manager, regardless of how good you were as a player.
The one thing I would say about Gerrard is that he's got a much more rounded experience, I think, at Rangers than Lampard did in one season at Derby, to be fair. Like, I know there obviously is questions about levels, and that's very valid questions, but he has also got Rangers, I think, to the Europa League group stages twice. So he's like, you know, Gerrard is building up a bit more of a CV, and in those European games in particular, like they've actually been reasonably good in Europe. Like he would have learned a fair bit, I would have thought. So it's not quite the same as Lampard having one season at Derby and getting a sort of a top 6 job. You know, I think Gerrard, there's no doubt he probably has his eyes on the prize, but I would think he's getting a bit more experience. And Rangers now will be in the Champions League qualifiers next year, and I think if he suddenly starts, if he can get them into that, I think some of those question marks will probably go away a bit. But I mean, the text probably still stands to a degree.
It's 2-2 now, West Brom and Fulham. Ivan Cavaliero has equalised for Fulham. A great game there at the Hawthorns. Do Liverpool need to sign a defender to win the title, Gary, in your view?
Well, listen, it depends. Not just a defender. Who's the defender?
The right defender.
Yeah, the right defender. Listen, we talked about
not many of them
this,
around as well, yeah.
Well, there isn't in terms of the quality that they need. And I've heard people saying just get a stopgap in, but I don't buy into that. I would trust Klopp's judgment far more than I would any pundit shouting out you need a centre-half as such. But listen, in terms of Matip, another injury. I know it's not a muscle injury and it's an impact one, but nevertheless, this is a guy who I think is a good centre-half, great signing from Schalke. I've said that so many times, free transfer, but just can't get enough consistency in terms of selection out of him. And that's the pressure that they're going to have to address, whether or not they do it now, but they'll certainly have to do something about it in the summer.
A lot more positive signs against Spurs. Salah will look sharp. Firmino played well. 3-1 win. Can they bring that momentum now into the game against West Ham tomorrow? Because West Ham been playing very well, your old club.
They've been playing so well. I mean, in terms of what David Moyes has done there, it's been so impressive. And the biggest standout in terms of what he's done is that he's got athleticism in that central midfield area. Soucek, alongside Declan Rice, have the type of energy that they just didn't have with the likes of Noble. Noble, an iconic player for West Ham, of course he is, but they seem to have that throughout the team now. Antonio's going to run those centre-halves hard. He really does. He's like a battering ram at times. So it's a real challenge for Liverpool. Listen, Klopp came out after that game against Tottenham and said it was a good win. It was necessary. And I think it was in terms of trying to get a little bit of momentum back again. But they're still a fabulous team, Liverpool. Of course they are. And I've said this so many times, John, and I know people will be sick of me saying it, but I won't tire of saying it. Defences win you the league. And the reason why Manchester City are up there now, I know they have that offensive threat and so much talent in the team, is because they sorted out their defence. Liverpool won the league because of their defence. I think they'll probably struggle to do it again this year because of the fact that Van Dijk is not there.
It's funny, like we were speaking about what can change between now and March for Stephen Kenny. Matt Doherty might not have had the best of seasons for Spurs, but the thing about it is Serge Aurier drives home at half-time, throws his toys out of the pram in a massive way, and that's probably not going to work for him with Jose Mourinho, and that's could be an opportunity now for Matt Doherty to be a regular starter in the team.
Do you know what? I didn't even know he did that. But yeah, listen, you'll take whatever chances you can get. But listen, in terms of doing that to a manager, I don't expect Mourinho to take too kindly to that. But yeah, listen, it's a difficult one for Matt Doherty. You've got to make that move to Tottenham from Wolves. But the Wolves team was set up perfectly to play to his strengths. Now, in terms of making that decision for Ireland, is the Irish team set up for his strengths? No, it's not. So it's a simple decision for me in terms of Seamus or Matt. I think Matt is a brilliant wing-back, I really do. But if you're asking me now in terms of who plays that first game in March, it's Seamus.
It's interesting. I would look at you missed something by not being in the stadiums, definitely. But it did seem the other day that Mourinho was actually quite animated with Doherty a lot of the time in that match.
He was, yeah.
He was definitely getting after him. Now, he was playing sort of on the left, and I know he's played a season there at Wolves, and he's quite versatile, and he played left centre-half for Ireland against Wales in October, and he has the ability to do it. But it did seem he'd been given a specific role, and he was getting after him. It just seems like he's getting after Doherty a lot. So I was shocked when I saw that about Aurier heading off home at half-time, because he's sort of like, being the galvanised figure, using that word not today, but this season he really has been. I mean, that does open the door for Doherty, who basically probably struggled at times in the game, and even when he switched him, which was more maybe
as did
natural
Spurs in general, Dan, I think.
Yeah, to be
fair,
they
were awful. They were terrible. Yeah.
But it does seem like Mourinho was
It was a tough game for him to play in.
It does seem like Mourinho probably probably sees a degree of a. I know, again, Doherty is born in 1992, so he's 29 now, but he's almost a project for him maybe to some degree. He's trying to. You can imagine Mourinho sort of working, and I know the type of character that Matt kind of is. I can imagine how Jose would sort of, would be maybe getting after him a bit, because he has this. It's very hard to explain, but people have heard Matt Doherty being interviewed. He's very honest. He says what he feels, and sometimes he would say himself, concentration wise and stuff. You can see why. Mourinho would probably be working away at him and trying to drill stuff into him the whole time. But to be honest, that's probably a great opportunity for him if Aurier has sort of thrown the toys out of the pram, because I can't imagine Jose is going to take that too well.
No, because
all of a sudden, Doherty's probably back in there in his favourite spot.
Yeah, because Danny Rose, it didn't take too well to Danny Rose challenging him. We also had the situation with Dele Alli, constantly, you're out, you're gone. I can't see, Mourinho's authority being challenged in that way. Not a hope of Aurier being back in, unless he really feels that nobody else can do the job, and Reguilon has been injured as well. But Spurs only one clean sheet in their last 8. The Harry Kane thing, Gary, when is Gareth Bale going to make an impact? Because if it's not now, it's never.
It's incredible, isn't it, in terms of you can understand him trying to phase him in. He plays so little football at Real Madrid, and you're thinking, okay, well, listen, maybe not getting the games to get fit, but certainly you can do the hard yards at the training ground. But when there's opportunities to put him on, he just doesn't do it. I don't know whether or not we'll ever see Gareth Bale at the level. I mean, if he was still playing at that level, then he'd still be at Real Madrid. So there is certainly a drop down in his ability. But still, John, I think even the most hardcore Tottenham fans would have expected more from him than we've seen so far. And it can't just be that Mourinho's not putting him in.
We got a great text in here, 53116. Hi lads, they were showing Ireland versus Saudi Arabia from the 2002 World Cup last night on Air Sports. The centre-back, great touch for big lad, knocked in abuse and was rumoured to be going to Barcelona. I wonder what happened to him. Great memories. That is from Hugh.
Oh, he never recovered, did he? He never recovered from that from those heights.
Conor Hourihane was one of the most important players in terms of avoiding relegation for Villa when other players went missing. Got rewarded by hardly getting any game time this season, says another one of our texters on 53106. We had
a stream for the Jack Byrne game, JD, and in a further Irish twist, it costs €5 and you pay for it via Stripe, which good Irish connection there. So he seems to be playing basically central midfield, and they've been under the cosh. But yeah, he's playing very, very centrally, and it's going to be an interesting. I didn't think I'd be watching Cypriot football on a Saturday afternoon, but there you go.
Well, I mean, you're actually meant to be on air at the moment, John. But aside from that, it's actually very ethical behaviour that you promote. We've started off at illegal streams, and we've ended up getting you to pay for a $5 by the end of it. So
couldn't find an illegal one, to be fair. But no, it's we always double tassel them. We have the game on in the background, and we discuss what's going on and so forth. But yeah, this is a this is going to be interesting because if you play well in central midfield, you're not going to get dropped. So it's going to be an interesting 90 minutes for him.
We had Antonio Montero on earlier on the Saturday panel, part of our Future of Sport. He's a coach, Gary, in Castleknock here in Dublin, and he's had this really good idea of the silent sideline, where unless there's an instruction to be given to a kid, that the parents need to just hold their tongue, as it were.
Yeah.
Did you deal with many pushy parents in coaching? You were in Barnet and that kind of thing, or have you seen it much in football? Is it something that the behaviour on the sideline, has it improved over years?
Well, listen, I was coaching Barnet's first team and Peterborough's first team, so I wouldn't expect parents to be shouting on the sides there. But listen, you still get it. Listen, I remember at Peterborough, Gavin Strachan, who's the first team coach at Celtic now, was the youth team coach at Peterborough. And when he got those lads in initially and they were starting their apprenticeships, he pulled the parents and he said, none of you are to say anything on the sidelines. I won't accept it, blah, blah, blah. Let us coach your players. And I think at times when you watch youth team games, some of the things that the parents say are horrendous in terms of the information they're giving, what they're saying, the cursing and stuff. So I think that's a good idea, no doubt about that.
You should have seen under 12 and under 14 Gaelic football when I was younger.
I can imagine.
There were literally civil wars between the parishes of Montbellion and Ballygarrett on the sideline. This is an under 12 game,
But it's a valid point. It's definitely something that, as needs to be addressed generally behaviourally. I know Shane Keegan is off and on with us, and he did a piece a couple of years back about. He was at a sort of a high-level underage league game, and he was watching the sort of various parents and characters. And the standout player on the pitch, I think he overheard, he left the pitch and he saw the dad who'd said nothing during the game. All the dad said to him was, "Did you enjoy it?" And it was a very different sort of style than the push parent. And that kid is a guy called Ben McCormack, who is at St. Pat's now and would be one of the sort of top teenagers in the country at the moment. And you can definitely, if you go to any decent sort of underage schoolboy match and stuff, there's no doubt that sideline behaviour. And you mentioned parents, but obviously, sometimes it's coaches themselves. I think Jason Sherlock spoke.
Absolutely,
spoke during the week about sort of mini Mourinho's or sort of at sort of youth level, and that is a problem. There is no doubt about that. Different personalities will respond in different ways. Maybe some people need it, but the example that it can set, you sort of hear anecdotal tales of sort of carnage on the sidelines of games, and that breeds bad habits. Definitely.
John, when I was my last season as a professional, I was captain of Wolves.
Yeah.
And I actually had to go and speak to one of I won't say the teammates, Dad, because he was being with all the families and all that, and he'd be like, whatever he'd be coming out with was horrendous. And I had to go and pull him and say, listen, if you want to talk like that, you're going to have to go in the main stand or something. So I had to even do it down to an actual senior player.
Well, and was that because your families were all hearing it? Was that basically what was happening?
Not necessarily my family, but the other families were going, this is going on for 4 or 5 weeks. He was coaching from where he was sitting, shouting and everything, and this player's not doing that, and why is he not doing this? Imagine that, being told, but listen, you're the captain, you're going to have to go and have a word. And I had to. He was a lovely man, but he said, listen, sorry, my emotions get the better of me, sorry.
And how did you broach it? Did you approach him at a game or ring him, or what was the way you actually...
No, I had to get him in the bar afterwards, and the lad, his lad's a great lad, his son and stuff, and I just had to say to him, listen, I have to have a word with your dad, and he was like, yeah, do it, you're better off doing it than me.
We were asked by our producer Shane Hannon to ask this question, and I'm not going to ask this because I'm the person asking the question, and I wouldn't have a good answer for it, so I'm not going to give the answer for myself. But DCU professor Niall Moyna was speaking about the health of the nation this week on our OTB Future series. He said an average 30-year-old male should be able to do 21 push-ups, an average 40-year-old 16. How many can we do, lads? Gary, I'm sure you're a temple of fitness. I'm sure it's been no issue for you to do.
No, I used to be, but this lockdown has hit me hard. Listen, I used to enjoy going to the gym every day and stuff like that, but my body's starting to go a little bit like the Grinch.
Oh, Gary, oh God.
I know, it's not great. But press-ups, not too bad. I can still hold my own, I'd say.
Lads, can you hold your own?
Well, I've only just discovered that. Well, I haven't only just discovered, but I heard those stats and I realised I'm closer to 40 than 30 now, and that was my real takeaway from the whole thing. I was paying attention to the 30-year-old staff going, oh yeah, 20. Then I realised, actually, sorry, no, I'm actually on the older end. And Johnny's exactly the same as me. But I thought Johnny's out cycling the whole time, so he's probably got a better chance than any of us, I'd say, potentially.
Yeah. I don't think cycling will help you in that regard, though. I was all right when I went to the gym, but I just got so fed up with the gym, JD, that I haven't tried that in a while, and I'd say I'd struggle to get to 5, I'd say, to be honest, at the moment. So, yeah, pretty sad, but... Yeah, it's cycling is better crack than going to the gym, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm on day 29 of 100 days of walking, but I don't think that helps push-ups, but we'll continue that to the 100 days. Lads, as a United fan, I'm loving the season. Twists, turns, up and down form. You don't know what to expect next. Seriously, it's better than any Netflix show I've seen in a long time, from David Stevenson in Drogheda. Gary, what's on the Netflix for you?
At the moment, what have I watched? I watched a film over the last couple of days, Outlaw King. It's quite good. What other series I've watched? Random ones, to be perfectly honest. Top Boy, I enjoyed that.
And lads, are you heavy on the Netflix at the moment?
Oh, God. I'm working my way through the Queen's Gambit at the moment, which is very cliche, but I never got around to watching it, so I think we're getting our way through it. But, yeah, pretty unimaginative. But, see, there's a lot of football on at the moment, so actually... It's been pretty. I thought we were hitting saturation point with football, but actually in January I've quite enjoyed the spread of the fixtures, to be honest. So probably haven't been binge watching as much stuff, which is probably a good sign, I think.
I'm watching The Wire, JD. Actually,
what series are you on?
I'm on 5 now. It's where it's quite sad because it's like obviously the team of Series 5.
Don't give it away because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I managed not to watch The Wire, but anyway, the fifth series is, so I've kind of binged it, and the fifth series is about the fall and the struggles of journalism, and I could relate, but I'm just trying to figure out like what character I most like. Is it like
Omar
McNulty's Ziggy, or the journalist who just can't get the story, So it's one of the three anyway, but it's a great show, all right.
The Wire is incredible. I saw the first 3 series of it. I think I'll need to go back to it. It's an incredible series, The Wire, Baltimore in the early 1990s. The young Ivorian striker Amad Diallo scored twice for the Man U under-23s today in his debut in a 6-3 victory over Liverpool. 17-year-old forward Joe Hugel scoring the other 4 for Manchester United. Just to let you know about the Scottish situation and the Scottish Premiership. Celtic won St Mirren 2. We got Leicester Leeds tomorrow. Gary, there's bound to be goals in that one.
Yeah, without doubt. I've seen Leicester a couple of times recently. Brendan Rodgers doing a great job there. Some players really coming to the fore. Madison, of course. But Barnes on that left-hand side, it's been so impressive, adding goals to his game. Of course, we know how expansive Leeds are, so it'll be a good game, be an open game, but I would expect Leicester to come out on top on that one.
We got the teams from Arsenal against Manchester United. This is at the Emirates Stadium.
Arsenal versus Manchester United. It's one of the classic Premier League fixtures, and both teams need the victory this evening. Arsenal make one change from the win against Southampton in midweek. They'll be without one of their key players. Saka isn't in the squad, so I can only presume he is injured. He is replaced by Martinelli in the 11. New signing Martin Odegaard is on the bench. As for Manchester United, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer rings the changes from that shot defeat by Sheffield United. 5 in all. Lindelof, Cavani, Fred Shaw and McTominay come into the starting 11. At the Emirates Stadium, it's Arsenal versus Manchester United.
And Manchester City now 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League. They'd beaten Sheffield United by 1-0 at the Etihad Stadium with a goal from Gabriel Jesus. Just Daniel, briefly on Euro 2021, is there more of a worry now that we won't be hosting matches here in Dublin, do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, UEFA are very determined to plough ahead with the 12-city format. John, but I don't know, where are we? What are we today? We're hitting into February now. I think they've more so talking about March. I mean, listen, I hate pandemic predictions. It just brings people down. Yeah. But I don't think the FAI are expecting to have fans at an Ireland game until September. So on that basis, how can they expect to have? How can UEFA expect to have fans coming to Dublin in June? Obviously, the current mood at the moment is very much against travel and discussions around travel. If it happens at all, it'll be closed doors. But that sort of raises the question of what's the point in bringing everyone to Dublin for a closed doors thing just because you've got hosting rights? I mean, I don't see what a commercial gain and benefit or what the country gains from that. So I don't want to be negative about it. It would be great if it could, but it's just not realistic. But UEFA the vibes are the UEFA want to plough ahead. I mean, UEFA have lost a lot of money on this whole thing that they break contracts and buy out certain things, and the tickets, refunding and stuff. And I don't know, they seem they want to play ahead with this format, because I think in some countries you can probably see fans. I'm sure Russia will get some fans in there and whatever. But I just, to me, it's a bizarre thing to be talking about now. Yeah. It seems at odds with everything else that's going on in our lives, that in June we could have this. I don't know who really is going to be that excited about it, because I can't see us really being throwing down the welcome mat to tourists in June. And if you don't have them, well, then that's not really the major tournament experience, So it's, to me, I can't see it. But, UEFA will try and call the shots on it as much as they can.
Well, guys, I hope you stay safe, mind yourselves. And the next time we talk, the good news is we'll be in February. Thanks so much for today, guys.
Thanks
very much. Good luck,
guys.
Gary Breen, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward there. As always, great stuff from them. Celtic 2-1 down in injury time in the Scottish Premiership. Just let you know as well, in the Premier League, it's finished Everton 0, Newcastle 2, Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0, West Brom 2, Fulham 2, and Manchester City 4 points clear at the top now. A 1-0 win over Sheffield United. In the Championship, full-time Norwich 0, Middlesbrough 0. Full-time Birmingham City 1, Coventry City 1. Latest scores, Blackburn Rovers 1, Luton 0. It's Brentford 7, Wickham 2. That's the latest score. Cardiff City 1, Millwall 1, a latest score. It's Derby 1, Bristol City 0 at the moment. Huddersfield Town 1, Stoke City 1, Nottingham Forest 0, Barnsley 0, and Rotherham United 1, Swansea City 3, Sheffield Wednesday 1, Preston North End 0. That is a full time from the Championship. Arsenal kicking off against Manchester United at 5:30. You have Southampton then against Aston Villa at 8 o'clock in the Premier League. And then we got the 2 games tomorrow. We'll get into that now, because we want you to remind you that Off the Ball Sunday tomorrow from 1 until 7. We'll be here with Joe Malloy in the chair, Grania McElwain and Timmy McCarthy. They'll join us for the Sunday pay-per-view that will then bring you 2 live and exclusive Premier League commentary games. Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr describing the match between Leicester City and Leeds United. Then Stephen Doyle and Vinnie Perth calling the shots for the encounter between West Ham United and Liverpool. Going to be a brilliant show. Be sure to tune in. So if you missed our Saturday panel with Sarah Keane, Michael Carruth and Antonio Montero as part of our Future of Sport series here on OTB, or our suicide awareness conversation with Sue Carty, or any of OTB Football Saturday with Gary Breen, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward, you'll be able to find a podcast of our content on the OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in your app store now to download the app for iOS and Android, or listen back wherever you get your pods. Thanks so much for listening today. Speak soon. Bye-bye.